Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, we're going to see the irrationality of these ex-Muslims who claim they've left Islam because Islam is an irrational religion. Yet when I went to an ex-Muslim on Facebook to question him on his atheistic worldview, because he claims he's left Islam because it's irrational, doesn't make sense. He then goes to atheism. So I questioned him on his atheistic worldview about some of the issues that I find controversial and illogical upon the subject of morality. And I had this ex-Muslim named Abdullah Gondal who actually had no issue if hypothetically one day that if he had sexual desires for his own daughter and she had sexual desires for him and there was consent involved, then he would allow his daughter to actually suck his genitals. And he agreed to that. He said there's basically, it's not wrong in the atheist worldview, and he agreed to it. And I'll show you the screenshots. Have a look. And before I display the screenshots, I want to also remind you that I got permission from Abdullah Gondal to post these private messages. As you can see in the screen here, I wrote to Abdullah Gondal on his Facebook. I said to him, "Do you give permission to post around your private messages to me? It seems you're posting a lot of my messages around." And Abdullah then says that he mentions about him posting some of my comments. And I said, "Sure, no problem." I said, "You can post them." I said, "Do you mind if I post your private messages you sent to me about incest and bestiality and make them public?" And he said, "I already said, please make a video about it all." And I said, "Thank you." So I got his consent just in case some of the Abdullah Gondal followers are pretty annoyed about this and want to shut down this video. So I did get permission of Abdullah Gondal to post our private exchange. So I asked Abdullah Gondal, I said, "So answer me, according to your atheist worldview, would you support anyone having sex with a donkey if the animal shows signs of sexual behavioral consent?" Now, at first glimpse, Abdullah says, "What? No?" As you can see in the comment, he goes, "What? No?" So he's basically saying no. But then I asked him, so I pressed him a bit. I said, "Please explain why no?" Because as you know, if things are done in consent, then an atheist really can't say no to this freedom. So then Abdullah writes back and he says, "I was going to bring up consent, but now that I think of it, I got to read up on philosophical arguments." Abdullah then goes on to say, "'Cause we are all animals and interspecies sex is naturally observed." Did you hear that? He goes on to say, "I'd say it's nothing productive at all. As long as the animal and you aren't being harmed, it's fine. How do you define the animal is consenting is a key, like humping motion." Well, yes, there's actually a video on YouTube where it shows a donkey running in a field trying to hump a man. So I guess Abdullah now agrees that if the donkey shows a humping motion, then the animal is consenting. He then goes on to say, "But apart from our social bias against it, I don't really see anything wrong with it." So there you have it, folks. Abdullah goes from the irrationality of Islam to apparently the rationality of the atheist worldview, where he is condoning sex with a donkey. And he says there's nothing really wrong with it. And this is a really interesting thing. Abdullah Gondal, the ex-Muslim, he goes on to say, quote, I always find it curious that atheism is merely a lack of belief in God. It isn't a moral position, so why drag atheism into morality? But I guess you want to argue for God using the moral argument, so I see where you're coming from. But thanks for bringing bestiality up. He says, now that I think of it, it's interesting. I'll read up on philosophers' arguments about it. So I then said to Abdullah, so you don't think it's wrong to have sex with a donkey? Okay, thank you for your honesty then. And Abdullah writes back and says, as long as the donkey, he's accidentally wrote money, but he means donkey. He says, as long as the donkey and you are not being harmed and both sides are consenting, he says, I'll get back to you though. So basically he's a bit troubled. He wants to go read other philosophical arguments about it. But up until this point, he concedes to agreeing to sex with a donkey. So there you have it, folks. That is Atheism 101. You go from the irrationality apparently of Islam to the rationality of atheism that permits one to go and have sexual entertainment with animals. This is the perversion of atheism. Now, folks, if you thought that was crazy, it's even getting more creepy and more crazy. This ex-Muslim, Abdullah Gondal, believes that you can actually engage in sexual relationships with your own daughter according to the atheist worldview. So I asked him a question and I said to Abdullah, so Abdullah Gondal, can I get one last confirmation according to your atheist moral worldview? If, hypothetically speaking, one day you had sexual feelings towards your own biological daughter and she had sexual feelings towards you, and you asked her for her consent to give you a blowjob, would you let her suck your genitals? Abdullah Gondal replies back and says, yes, buddy. Look at that. He says, yes, buddy. And then he writes back, seems a bit quite annoyed. He says, I can play this game too. Now answer my question. Actually, let me ask you an incest-based question since it interests you so much. He asked me, is incest evil? I replied back to Abdullah and I said, wow, I'm really shocked you would allow your own biological daughter to suck your penis. That's really sick and pathetic, Abdullah Gondal. How could you be so low? Abdullah then replies back and says, buddy, don't act surprised. I would not personally. It's a hypothetical scenario you created. So now please answer me. He says, is incest evil? So I replied back and I said, but hypothetically, if in a real reality in the future, you did happen to fall in love with your own biological daughter and she felt the same about you, you would allow her to suck your penis, correct? He basically says, I don't have nor ever had incestual feelings, so please stop. So he's feeling a bit uncomfortable here. So then I keep continuously pushing Abdullah and I said, unless you're making yourself absolutely 100% clear, I'm not ready to move on, because he keeps wanting to move on. I said, please answer my question. Let's presume in the future you did develop incestuous feelings towards your daughter and she developed those feelings for you. Would you allow her to suck your penis, since you don't believe incest is wrong in the atheist worldview? Abdullah then writes back and says, hypothetical future, sure, bud. Didn't I already say? But in hypothetical future scenarios, yeah? So Abdullah agrees, doesn't have a problem that one day, if he falls in love with his own daughter, hypothetical situation. Let's say he did fall in love. He doesn't even condemn it. He actually would follow his desires and let his daughter suck his genitals. And I said to him, that's really pathetic and sick, Abdullah Gondal, that in the future, if you fell in love with your daughter and she felt the same about you, you would allow her to suck your penis. That's abhorrent. Now, Abdullah then says, if that happened, I'd be sick. So he doesn't condemn it. He just, he basically says that I've got the right to call him a sick person if he goes ahead and does it in the future. He says, for the sake of discussion, let's agree that I'm a sick, horrible person. Well, you are a sick, horrible person because you can't even condemn it. You're actually favoring it in the sense that you're open-minded towards that sort of behavior. That is absolutely sick and abhorrent. So there you have it, folks. These are the atheists. These are the moral values they're calling us to. These are the same people that are accusing religious beliefs and religious systems and dogmas for indoctrinating irrationality into the hearts of people when he claims he's left Islam and he claims he's now an ex-Muslim. He claims that religion was backward, religion was irrational, and now he comes to atheism and he believes it's okay, it's apparently irrational, to go make love to a donkey. It's okay to one day entertain the idea that having sex with your daughter in the future is not an impossibility for the atheistic worldview, so long as you fall in love and your daughter consents to it.